Introduction to the module. Work at height means work in any place where a person could fall a distance liable to cause personal injury if precautions were not taken. This module covers what precautions should be taken when working at a height. Topics to be covered. Introduction. The Work at Height Regulations 2004, WAHR. Construction hazards and controls from working at height. Safe workplace. Injuries associated with falls from height. Working over water. The effect of deteriorating materials and weather. Working above ground or where there is a risk of falling. Hazards and controls associated with working at height. Access equipment. Roof work. Protection of other persons. Introduction. Work at height accounts for about 50 to 60 deaths, more than any other workplace activity, and 4,000 injuries each year. During the first 2 weeks of June 2003, inspectors from the Health and Safety Executive visited 1,446 construction sites and stopped all work at 1/4 of them due to concerns about the level of risks of falls from height. Another 5% of sites visited were issued with improvement notices. The Work at Height regulations affects approximately 3 meters workers where working at height is essential to their work. Amongst other measures, the height of guardrails on scaffolds is increased by 40 mm to 950 mm, thus recognizing that the average size of workers has grown over the last 40 years. The design of construction projects can also reduce health and safety hazards and accident rates. A study of accident data on falls from a height over the 5 years from 1996 until 2001 emphasized the importance of building design and eliminating work at height hazards. The Work at Height Regulations 2004, WAHR. The WAHR has no minimum height requirement for work at height. They include all work activities where there is a need to control a risk of falling a distance liable to cause personable injury. This is regardless of the work equipment being used, the duration of the work at the height involved, or the height at which the work is performed. It includes access to and egress from a place of work. It would therefore include working on a scaffold or from a mobile elevated work platform, MEWP. Sheeting a lorry or dipping a road tanker. Working on the top of a container in a dock, ship, or in a storage facility. Tree surgery and other high-altitude forestry work. Using cradles or rope to get access to a building or other structure, such as a ship under repair. Climbing on fixed structures such as a gantry or a telephone pole. Working near an excavation area or cellar opening where a person could fall in and get injured. Painting or pasting and erecting bill posters at height. Work on staging or trestles, for example for filming or events. However, it would not include slips, trips and falls on the same level. Falls on permanent stairs if there is no structural or maintenance work being done. Work on the top floor of a multi-story building where there is no risk of falling. The regulations require that work is not carried out at height when it is reasonably practicable to carry the work out safely other than at the height. When work is carried out at height, the employer shall take suitable and sufficient measures to prevent, so far as is reasonably practicable, any person falling a distance liable to cause injury. The employer shall take suitable and sufficient measures to minimize the distance and consequences of a fall. Construction hazards and controls from working at height. Safe workplace. Safe access to and egress from the place of work is essential when working at height. All working platforms, ladders, scaffolds, gangways and passenger and materials hoists must be safe for use and be subject to regular inspection. Working platforms should also be kept as clear and clean as possible to avoid slip and trips and the accidental loss of material to the ground below. Injuries associated with falls from height. Falls from great heights can cause fractures, severe head injuries, and, in extreme cases, death. As a result, it is essential that particular precautions be taken to protect personnel when they are operating at heights. Common construction work activities at height include brick or block laying, roofing, steelwork erection, rendering, cladding, high-pressure water jetting, grit blasting, concrete repairs, painting and some demolition work. For all these activities, safe systems of work are essential. General hazards, such as dust, hazardous substances, noise, electricity, vibrations and noise, can also be present due to the nature of the work being carried out at height. The collapse of false work structures is common and, when it occurs at height, can cause serious injury. The majority of accidents caused by the collapse of false work are the result of a lack of communication between the many trades that employ it and their suppliers or erectors. The cleaning of buildings and monuments involves the use of hazardous techniques such as grit blasting or high-pressure water jets, which is often done from scaffolding or even ladders. With both these techniques, care is needed to protect the workers, the occupiers of the building and passers-by from hazards such as noise, dust, falling debris and possible flooding of walkways. The equipment must be maintained and inspected regularly, and operatives provided with training, supervision and suitable personal protective equipment, goggles, ear defenders and gloves, and waterproof clothing. Working over water. Where construction work takes place over water, steps should be taken to prevent people from falling into the water and rescue equipment should be available at all times. If the work takes place adjacent to a river or canal, special precautions are needed for persons using a towpath. The Construction, Health, Safety and Welfare Regulations 1996 cover any work where there is a risk to operatives of drowning. At the planning stage of any work over or beside the water, the following points need to be considered. The provision of suitable fencing to ensure that persons do not fall into the water by the condition of barriers or fences with tow boards. The provision of life jackets, buoyancy aids and grab lines, fast-flowing water like rivers. The provision of rescue equipment, life belts, harnesses, safety lines, and in some cases, a rescue boat. Where transport by water is required, arrangements must be made for safe landing stages and life jackets. When boats are used, they should be of suitable construction, under the control of a competent person, not overloaded and adequately maintained. Specific training for boat operatives, rescue teams and supervisors. All precautions must also protect the safety of the public, especially children. Suitable security measures will be necessary to prevent the theft of rescue equipment and boats outside working hours. Weather, tides and flooding conditions must be taken into account when planning rescue measures and using boats as transport. The effect of deteriorating materials and weather. As many materials age, they become brittle, weaker and less stable. It is also a problem in other situations found in construction work, such as refurbishment work and the various cladding materials, including asbestos, used inside and outside buildings. They can affect the work process by displacing tools and materials and cause injuries to persons working at height or those below the workings. Such winds, if strong enough, can also lift roofing tiles or sheets, particularly if the roof is only partially completed. Such problems often occur outside normal working hours, causing injuries to members of the public, including trespassers, and damage to neighboring properties. Finally, cold weather can also present hazards when working at height, particularly when the cold weather is accompanied by wind which will produce a chill factor and an apparent temperature that is lower than the actual one. Guardrails will become colder, and the reactions of workers are much slower. Of course, cold weather will have an effect on construction processes, such as the mixing of cement and the laying of bricks. Workers should wear appropriate clothing, and if the temperature is too low, work at height should cease. Working above ground or where there is a risk of falling. Hazards and controls associated with working at height. Work at any height involves a risk of falling. The significance of injuries resulting from falls from height, such as fatalities and other serious major injuries, have been dealt with earlier in this chapter, as has the importance and legal requirements for head protection. The primary means of preventing falls of people or materials include the use of fencing, guardrails, tow boards, working platforms, access boards, ladder hoops, safety nets and safety harnesses. Safety harnesses prevent the fall by limiting the fall to a specific distance due to the harness's attachment to a point on an adjacent rigid structure. Access equipment. There are many different types of access equipment, but only the following 4 categories will be considered here. Ladders. Fixed scaffolds. Mobile scaffold towers. Mobile elevated work platforms. Roof work. Before any roof work is started, a risk assessment should be undertaken. This should include assessing the roof's structural integrity and the methods to be used to repair the top and ACOSHH assessment of any hazardous substances to be used. The precautions needed when repairing the flat roof of a building include the provision of safe access to the roof, using scaffolding and/or ladders, the use of crawling boards, the provision of safety harnesses and edge protection, using tow boards, to prevent the fall of persons or materials. Roof battens should be checked to ensure they provide safe hands and footholds. If they do not, then crawling ladders or boards will be used. Crawling boards should always be provided when work on fragile roofing materials cannot be avoided. The roof's perimeter requires a 2-rail scaffold guardrail fitting together with a tow board where the gutter would not prevent materials from slipping from the roof. Protection of other persons. Members of the public must be protected at all stages of the construction project and at all times of day and night. Scaffold should be made very visible by painting standards, red and white stripes, masking cupolas, warning signs, good illumination at night and the provision of barriers and other means of safe passage. Safety precautions, such as the boarding of ladders, should be taken during periods when the site is unoccupied. Such protection should be provided to protect anyone, including trespassers, such as children. Other precautions and controls include the provision of safe access for workers and materials, a safe working platform, cleanup procedures and good housekeeping, full arrest equipment, protection for all premises occupiers' employees, a permit system for hot work where this was necessary, fire extinguishers and procedures for emergency evacuation of the building. Summary. In this module, we have covered work at height accounts for about 50 to 60 deaths, more than any other workplace activity, and 4,000 injuries each year. Falls from height can result in fractures, severe head injuries and, in some cases, death. The majority of accidents caused by the collapse of false work are the result of a lack of communication between the many trades that employ it. Where construction work takes place over water, steps should be taken to prevent people from falling into the water and rescue equipment should be available at all times. Members of the public must be protected at all stages of the construction project and at all times of day and night. Thank you. This is the end of this module. Thanks for watching. Happy learning.